Welcome to Inside the Life of Queengineers, Episode 1. I'm Laura. I'm currently a Year 12 student and an aspiring engineer myself. I started Queengineers because when I was looking into engineering, I realized how hard it is to find female representation in the field. And I wanted to kind of create a space where young girls can get inspiration, ask questions, and be able to visualize themselves in roles that Queengineers lead. So today I'm really excited to be joined by Dedun Oyenuga, a talented design engineer with a design engineering master's from Imperial College London. She's currently a multi-award winning consultant at Microsoft, where she combines her passion with engineering innovation and user-centered design. Through her work with Amazon's retail, HS2, and diversity and inclusion initiatives, we have so much to learn from her today. Thank you so much for being here today, Dedun.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Laura. It's really great to be here.
It's really nice to have you as well. Um,
Thanks.
Let's start by going back to the early days with your childhood and educational background. How did you know engineering was the right career for you?
So my answer to this question is interesting. In terms of my background, so I went to Haberdashers Girls in Elstree. That's where I went to school. In terms of my GCSEs and what I took, I guess GCSEs are when it's pretty broad, right? So I took a lot of
Yeah.
the standard subjects, maths. I think I took triple chemistry. I'm trying to think of the things that were elective. I had R&P, so religion and philosophy,
Okay.
geography as well. And then when I moved into my A levels, I took maths, physics, art, and then Spanish at
Oh, wow.
AS. I think in terms of how did I know I wanted to be an engineer or when did I know? I
Mhm.
never truly, knew there wasn't a specific point where I said engineering is the exact path for me. I think it was
Yeah.
something I was actually quite unsure about for some time. But I think that's because as a person, I'm not necessarily tied to a job title per se, or a specific field. For me, it was about following my interests and following my strengths. And I know that for me, it was very important to remain broad. I know a lot of people, especially in school, is kind of the time where you're expected to go down a specific path, right? So you're expected to specialize and be maths, physics, chemistry, that sort of thing, or
Yeah.
maybe be in the arts or maybe be in the humanities. But I'm someone who enjoyed all of those things. And I wanted to continue engaging with all of those different subjects for as long as I could. So engineering is a field that allowed me to do that, or specifically design engineering is a field that allowed me to do all of those things. And that's why I chose it.
Oh, that's really nice to hear how you kept being like well-rounded with all your like subjects. Um, did you find it hard, like looking at how you said it was like broad? Did you find it hard to choose? Did you choose between like other fields of engineering other than design? Or
So I guess design engineering at Imperial is quite computing heavy. So I know there were a lot of girls who were also considering design engineering or considering something of the like, who were also looking at mechanical engineering, for example. For me, it was always going to be very design focused. So the two engineering um, fields I was looking at were design engineering and then also architectural engineering. I think that's because
okay.
a lot of my work experience when I was in school was around construction, so it's just kind of what I knew. Also, when I was applying for design engineering at the time, there were only a few universities offering that. So with time, there are more universities that have taken that on. But back then, I think there were less than five, so I had no
Oh
choice
wow.
to choose. I had to apply for something other than design engineering. But I think I realized design engineering was the one for me purely because I didn't just want to focus on what we were building. I wanted to focus on why are we building something and who are we building it for? And those are really the first steps or the first principles within design. So that's kind of how I ended up there.
Nice. Was there a particular person or something that inspired you when you were in that journey with A levels and school?
There were definitely people that inspired me. So there were a few girls in the years above. So there was one girl in the year above me, or 2 years, two girls in the year above me, and another girl a couple years above who had studied design engineering at Imperial, and they'd come back to the school to talk about it. And hearing their experiences, what they were working on, and even not necessarily what they were working on, but what was happening in the school in general. So what was happening at the university just sounded really exciting to me and really appealed to me. And I think that's kind of what set me onto design engineering.
And like after sixth form, you studied design engineering at Imperial, which is like right now a highly competitive and popular course.
Mhm.
Can you like tell us a bit more about the structure of the course and what personally made it stand out for you?
The structure of the course. Okay. So it's 4 years. It's an MEng, so it's a master's in engineering. Um, there have been people on the course who have finished or left after 3 years and gotten their BN. So you can get a bachelor's, although it's unaccredited, so they discourage you from doing that. In terms of the course itself, you can read it in more detail on the website, but I would say they try to teach you to have breadth and to have kind of a hybrid mindset or wear multiple hats through an engineering or through a design process. So there's a lot of focus on traditional design and design thinking. There's focus on business. There's focus on computing. There's focus on ethics. So even in the span of one day, you could be discussing, material composition at 10 a.m. and then be discussing, child safety in the use of certain applications later on. So it was quite broad in that way. I'm trying to think of anything else that might be useful. I'd say when you start the degree, it's very exam heavy, but as you progress through each year, it becomes more and more coursework heavy. So it's more about what can you do either by yourself or in a group over a period of time. What can you show for that?
Oh, okay. What were your favorite projects that you took part in during the course, if you can
Um,
remember?
yeah, so it's been a little while. But if I had to go back, I feel like there were two favorites or two standouts for me.
Mhm.
Um, Both were actually in my final year. And I think that's because as you progress, not only is it more coursework heavy, but it's also your work is more biased towards what you want to do. So
Okay.
that's when you really start to specialize or follow your interests. You'll be given quite a broad or open brief, and then you're let out to do what you want with that. So in my master's year, I actually did a human research or human studies project, or some people refer to it as computer human interaction, so CHI, or sometimes you'll hear it HCI. Um, and it was about Black women experiencing imposter syndrome. So that was really exciting. That was quite personal to me. I spoke to a number of girls from different walks of life. I spoke to school students, I spoke to university students, I spoke to people who had just started out in their careers, and I spoke to women who were, at the top of their careers and were really high in corporate, and just asking them about their experiences, if imposterism is something that they've ever gone through, kind of digging into what's led to that, what are the different factors that have allowed for that, and then also understanding the tools that they use to soothe themselves. So whether it's leaning on community, whether there are online resources or different things that they look to, how do they move through that? So it was exploring kind of the triggers, the reasons, and then designing a web app to support them through that. So post listening to their experiences and understanding, I suppose, what we would call the problem space, designing a solution to help combat that. So that was really personal for me, and that was really cool. Another project that was a lot of fun, also in my final year, was a web app I worked on in a group, and it was called En Route. It essentially was a mapping app, so similar to a Waze or an Apple Maps or a Google Maps. But what was interesting about it is um, it's all about safety. So the task, it was around designing a solution um, towards one of the Sustainable Development Goals, so one of the UN's SDGs. And we were looking at street safety. And specifically, we were looking, largely at women and how they feel safe. So we were creating a mapping or a routing app that took in different safety factors. But one really interesting question that came out of that, right, is what make the things that make you feel safe might not be the things that make me feel safe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, People experience safety in different ways. So it was really about aggregating as much data as you could. So aggregating information around, okay, um, on this road, so on Newark Street, are the lights on after dark? Are there any pubs or clubs around? Because for some people, you know, it being super rowdy with drunk people inside might make you
Yes.
feel unsafe, but for other people, knowing that there are people around makes them feel safer. Are there police stations around? Are there bus stations? Lots of different factors. And then what would happen is the user would opt in or choose which factors made them safe or unsafe. And then the algorithm would kind of work using that information. So that was really, really interesting and kind of carrying that out from beginning to end, speaking to lots of different prospective users, but then also speaking to um, we spoke to a lot of small businesses as well to understand, okay, is this something that they would lean into? Is there a way that businesses would like to get involved in terms of, if someone's coming home late and their phone is about to die,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
is there a marked safe space that they can enter? Are there small businesses that will allow them to, stop there for a short time whilst they charge their phone? I think we called them en route safe spaces. Um, so it was just very interesting. There was a lot to explore with that.
Well, those like coursework projects sound really interesting. Like how did you balance your coursework with like personal life, like your hobbies and socials, etc.?
To be frank, it was difficult.
Yeah.
I think Imperial is a university that really pushes you and really drives you, and there's a lot expected of you. I think it's really about grounding yourself, and knowing what you need to feel happy, to feel comfortable, to feel charged, and ready for
Okay.
for the day, for the
Yeah.
week, for the term. For me, that's being very involved in communities. So I was very involved with the African Caribbean Society or ACS. For 1 year, I was the ACS events officer. There was another year I was gospel choir president. I got involved in a few dance shows at uni. That was something that I really, really
Nice.
loved. What else was there? For about a year, I did some volunteering. So I worked at a homeless shelter. And I feel like it's really understanding, okay, what are the things that keep you going? And once you're able to identify those, making the time for those. But at the same time, also not also not making too much time for it. I think you've really got to strike a balance, and it's individual, it's personal, it's what works for you. Um, and just making sure you have enough time to study. Sometimes um, you hang out with your friends, but sometimes you have to hang out with your friends in the library
Yeah.
and not always, out and about. So it was, making time for everything and making sure that you also had enough sleep as well.
Yeah, definitely. Many of our listeners, I think, will be interested about in the course too. So, what top tips would you give to those wanting to apply for a place at Imperial for engineering?
I would say there's no clear path. I think, are we talking about design engineering or engineering at Imperial across board?
Design engineering.
Design engineering. I think there's no clear path. I think what's really, really great about design engineering is we've spoken about the breadth of content that you're exposed to, right? The different
Yeah.
modules, but also the cohort is really broad as well. Design engineering, the only required subject, and I believe it's still the same to this day, is math.
Oh,
So
okay.
what ends
Yeah.
up happening is you have some people on the cohort who come in with maths, further maths, physics, and chemistry, and then you have other people coming into the cohort with maths, um, art, and DT, right?
Yeah.
And it means that you have people with completely different interests, different backgrounds, different expertise all being brought together. And I think it's really exciting because it's very akin or similar to how we work in the real world. But my point with that is lean into your interests, right? Lean into what you want to do and lean into your strengths and then put your energy and your focus into that. Um, for me, certain people told me, and I'm not going to name who they are, but certain people said to me, because I studied maths, physics, art, and Spanish, that's too broad. What are you doing? If you want to be doing engineering, you should focus and you should go fully STEM or fully sciences. Um, but I didn't need to. I didn't need to do that. That wasn't the case. That wasn't the truth. I think it's just really knowing who you are and knowing what your interests are, and then just trying to explore. Um, I think have a record of things that show that you really want to be there and that you care, right? So whether that's reading books, whether that's going to different events, because there are so many different events. I remember in school I went to a few Imperial events
Oh,
with
okay.
some friends, and some people were like, "What do you mean?" Like, and they weren't student events; they were just like not school student events. They were just events that were open, being hosted
Oh,
by the
yeah.
university. And yes, we were probably the youngest in the room, but it kind of shows that you care, right? You're able to
Yeah.
see what's happening in the university, what's topical, what students they're already coming up with. Don't be afraid to go into London and show up to those different events. I know they also have a summer festival every single year, so that should be coming up, I think, in June or July. Um, what else is there? I think get work experience. Um, for me, I got a lot of work experience in architecture and then also in construction, so in the more engineering building side of things. Use your network, lean into your parents if you can, family and friends. But also I think, and this depends, not everyone has this opportunity, but if you have any speakers coming into school,
Mhm.
don't be afraid to reach out to them. Um, I got my first ever bit of work experience from a speaker that came to give a talk. They were actually renovating our school building at the time. They gave a
Oh,
talk about it, and I went up to them after and I said, it was really great to hear what you spoke about, blah, blah, blah. Um, I'd love to, talk further or maybe have some work experience. Could I take your card? He gave me his card. He said, write me
wow.
an email. I wrote an email and then I got the work experience. So,
Oh my gosh.
and sometimes it's just as simple as, putting out that ask. So be creative, explore, be able to articulate in that exploration what's working and what's not working. So you went to an event, you didn't like it. Why? You read this book, you loved it. Why? See look at your likes and your dislikes, look at your whys, align that with the course content. How does this make you a great applicant or a great candidate? What kind of niche do you see yourself fitting on the course? Are you the maths, physics, further maths, chemistry person? Are you the artsy person? Are you in between? Do you care about research and human behavior? Do you care about computing and electronics? Kind of, figure out what works for you and where you think you'll sit. Um, and I think just communicate that. Um, what else would I say? I think also as much as I'm saying all of this, explore, gather your information, you're never going to have all the information, right? So just remember, I guess, when you're writing personal statements and that sort of thing, there's still a lot for you to learn naturally. So what is it that you don't know that you really want to know about? Which module seems really exciting to you and you know a little bit about it or you know nothing about it, lean into that. So there's so much to talk about, so much to explore.
Nice. I really liked how you like go all into your interests and try and explore them, and also like if you don't ask, then you don't get like the how you experience with your work experience. Um,
Exactly.
so after the bridge between graduate and then an engineer, what does your current role look like?
Yes. So in terms of my track, yes, studied design engineering at Imperial. I had the summer off. So the way it worked for me is I applied to my graduate roles about a year before I stepped into them. So I applied for my roles when I was starting my master's year.
Okay.
So obviously you start around end of September. I think I had my role at Microsoft confirmed contract signed by the 1st of December. So I started in September of 2022 and I started as a technical consultant. So just giving that background. So I started in cloud. Um, the way I describe Microsoft and the roles that exist in the company, there are kind of two sides, right? So there's a making side and there's a selling side. The making side is the side that most people are familiar with. So that's building a lot of the products that individual users or individual consumers are using every day. So you might be familiar with Teams, with Word, with LinkedIn, with GitHub, all these different products. That's the product group. They work on, the software or the products that everyday users are interacting or engaging with. Then you have the selling side of the organization, and that's actually where we make the money. So that's how we make the money that gets invested into developing our products. So in the selling side, that's selling to large corporations, that's building custom products for large enterprise. And in building those custom products for large enterprises, where I've always sat at Microsoft. So I started off as a technical consultant. I specialized in cybersecurity. So we would build out these custom products for different large companies, and I would be tasked to secure it. So I would work in a team securing those products and making sure that they were safe, right? And then what I've done since then is I've since moved into UX or user experience, where I'm still working on building those custom products. And I guess one thing I failed to note just then is these custom products naturally are powered by Microsoft technology. Um, where I sit is in multiple parts. So it is in the research. So it's researching, okay, what do these prospective users need? What do they want? So anticipating their needs and scoping out the different features that we'll need as a result of that. So what features will the product have? And then it's the design portion. So it's designing the user interfaces for said products. So now we've decided what features this product needs. How are the users actually going to interact with it? So, for example, when you're looking at some sort of web interface, when you're looking at Microsoft Word, you see almost like a document style layout, right?
Yeah.
Someone designs that. Every single part of that, someone designs that. So that's where I would sit as well.
Okay. And to help our viewers understand what a career in design engineering look like, could you walk us through a typical day in the life and how that looks like for you?
I can, but it's kind of a tricky one because no day really looks the same, I would say. And it really depends on which projects I'm working at. So at any one time, I could be working with one customer full time on one product. I could be working with 5 customers. So just a month ago, I had 5 different projects happening
Oh my God.
simultaneously. Now I just have 3. So it really varies, right? Because when I just described my role, I described it in 2 parts, so kind of the research and then the design portion. So it means that in my day to day, some days I might get up and be speaking with users all day, asking them about their existing processes, trying to identify the pain points in their existing processes, and generating new ideas, or maybe going through different interviews that we've hosted and conducting what's known as sentiment analysis, which is really just trying to understand what the users are thinking and feeling. But then on another day or in the same day, I might be working on another project, and I might be, designing some UIs or some user interfaces. In Figma, I might be doing testing in another, session. So it's really varied, to be honest with you.
Oh, I love that how like every day is different than the other. That's really interesting. Like what kind of projects have you worked on in the past in your role, and which of them are you most proud of in your career journey?
So this one is a little difficult because of the sensitive nature of the projects that I work on. So I can't really divulge, client names or provide detail into what I was doing. What I can say is in my last role, so as a technical consultant looking at cybersecurity, I was involved in a lot of cloud migration. So that's, taking people's data from physical hardware and moving it into the cloud, and securing that. I've been involved in the development of data platforms, and that sort of thing. In my role now as a UX consultant or a UX user experience consultant, my work has become a little bit more varied. Right now, I'm working on an app that is being used by tens of millions of users globally. Um, I can't really talk about it, which is quite unfortunate. But a lot of the stuff that I do right now is related to AI. So it's different AI solutions, and that can be AI solutions for everyday people. That can be AI solutions for, I spoke about, we work with a lot of enterprise, right? So it can
Yeah.
be creating AI solutions for those enterprises' employees. So a lot of the time I might be working on almost like a custom Copilot. If you're familiar with Copilot, um, I
Copilot is the like AI kind of chat help on like Microsoft.
yes,
So yeah.
exactly. So creating custom Copilots for different organizations, that sort of thing.
Okay. So do you work mostly in a team or by yourself for your day?
Um, So I work largely in a team for the kind of projects that we're undertaking. They're a huge, huge effort, and you need expertise from a number of areas. So even if we look at consulting within Microsoft and the different consulting roles we have UX consulting, we have, I spoke about my last role, I was doing cybersecurity, so cybersecurity consulting. You have data and AI consultants, you have infrastructure or networking consultants, and all these people work together. Um, it has to be a team effort. You have data scientists, so you have people from a number of areas coming together to build a holistic solution. I'd say some of my day-to-day tasks will be
Mhm.
quite individual, um, but every single day we're working together. So even in a lot of projects, we have something known as a stand-up, which is quite typical within uh, a way of working known as Agile or Scrum. And at the beginning of every day, essentially, you have 15 minutes. You get on a call with your entire team, some of the customer team as well, and you are all given an opportunity to share what you're working on, um, and any areas that you might be blocked in, so anything that's going wrong. And the idea is that you flag things as soon as they come up so that people can help each other out as needed and to keep the project going efficiently and speedily.
Okay, so we talked a lot about like Microsoft and like digital stuff. Do you think that computer a background in computer science is kind of like maybe needed or recommended for design engineering?
You mean computer science in terms of A levels and then studying design engineering, or design engineering as a wider practice,
As a
when you're working?
practice.
Um, I think it's interesting, right? The way things are going in the industry. I don't think computer science is necessary. I think people can succeed within design engineering or the design engineering field without having come from that background. What I would say is that studying computer science, or engaging with computer science, or at the very least being technical and having those technical skills, knowing how to code, but even if you don't know how to code, understanding how the cloud works, understanding how different tools work, will make it easier for you. I think a few years ago, tech was a little bit of a free-for-all. I think there was a lot more openness, to accept people from a variety of backgrounds, and professions, and vocations. Whereas now, that openness is a little bit harder to come by. So I don't think it's by force. I think, if you're not technical and you hate it,
Yeah.
don't force yourself to do that. Maybe it's not the right thing for you. But I think if it's something that you're good at, and maybe it's not your favorite thing, I think even if you don't study computer science, I think making sure you're keeping up to date with those topics, you know what's going on, and just being able to constantly upskill in those areas will always be an asset to you. I think even for myself, if I look at my journey when I came to Microsoft as a technical consultant, the way I saw it was, I'm not sure if I really want to be on the technical side of things, but starting technically will never be a bad way to go. And that has
Yeah.
proven true for me.
Yeah. Are there any misconceptions that you think are there about engineering careers in general that you would want to clear maybe?
Um, Engineering careers in general, I think one misconception that I think is getting better now is around ethics. I think, even politically, I think the way the world is moving, I think there's a stereotype around who can occupy tech, or
Yeah.
sometimes people refer to people who work in tech as the tech bros, right?
Yeah.
And they're really great at coding, they're great at their jobs, but they fail to understand the wider implications of what they're working on. And
Mm.
ethically, does this make sense? Is this good for, greater humanity? And, even on a smaller scale, okay, I'm building something for a specific set of users. Those are the direct stakeholders. Who are the indirect stakeholders that are affected? Are we affecting them for better or for worse? These are the considerations that I think are really, really important when you're an engineer, and will guide you, I think, through your career, because you have to decide as an individual what's important to you, what you're willing to work on, and what you're not willing to work on. One stereotype I've encountered is that within engineering, or if you look at tech bros, um, they don't have that awareness.
Mm.
Um, and I don't think it's a misconception. I think there are a lot of tech bros that lack that awareness, to be
Yeah.
frank. But at least when I see university course content now. I have a mentee, and she's trying to study computer science or computer engineering at university. And even
Okay.
when I just look at, the different course content or module content at different universities, it really does seem like ethics is something that is being taught now and is becoming
Mm.
more important. I hope that even if it isn't necessarily taught in those spaces, that it's something that individuals choose to care about. So I think that's misconception number one. I think that was a big one. I think misconception number two, and this is a little more lighthearted, and it's less around engineering in general and more about my work specifically in UX. A lot of
Mhm.
people don't know what UX really is. A lot of people mix up UX with UI. So just, for basic clarification, UX stands for user experience, UI stands for user interface. User experience is all around the user's engagement with a product or with a service or with a solution, and it can be affected by a number of things. So someone's experience with a product can be affected by the time of day that they're using it. It can be affected by their own mood. It can be affected by their gender or their social background, that sort of thing. Whereas when we're talking about UI or a user interface, we're talking about the looks or the styling of a product. So that's your colors, your fonts, your layouts, the different images that you're using. And whereas UI is a large part of UX, right? How you style a product is very important, um, and dictates a lot of how people engage with it. They are not the same. They are not
Okay.
equal. They are two different things. UI overlaps with UX, but they are two different things. So sometimes, even on projects now, there might be people that haven't necessarily worked with UX before, and you kind of have to educate them a little bit on, what you do and that sort of thing. Um, but yes, I'd say that's the second misconception.
I really like them. And then this leads us on to like the final section of the interview. So, you brought much more than technical expertise to your role, but as a Queengineer, also break gender barriers every day as a Black woman in engineering. So, what helps you stay confident in workplaces where female engineers are in the minority?
Um, it's a great question. It's interesting because, tech is a really big place. And even when I look at, my own organization, there are certain units or orgs within the wider company
Mhm.
that are a lot more diverse. I think being in consulting, number one, and then being in technical consulting, right, means that you are going to be surrounded by a more homogenous group. So you're going to
Yeah.
see people look the same, and a lot of their lived experiences will be the same and might be different from yours. I think when you enter predominantly white male spaces, I think there are a number of things. I think number one, you just have to be yourself. I think you have to um, learn how to advocate for yourself and make sure that you're not overlooked or cast over. But I think also it's just important to make allies, make sponsors, um, and find those people that will advocate for you when you're not there, right? When you're not in the room, you're not going to be in every single room, right? So it's
Yeah.
not always enough to just get a mentor. Sometimes you need someone who um, actually has some influence, and can put in a good word for you when it's needed. Um, I think one thing that's been really interesting for me is coming from a Nigerian background and entering the workplace. In Nigerian culture, there's a deference that we almost give to elders. It's kind of a respect
Yeah.
that you give, right? So, of course, you say hi to your aunties and uncles, you chat with them, hi, auntie, how are you doing? Blah, 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 all these different things, right? But largely, if adults are having a conversation, you leave them to have their conversation. That's the
Yeah.
adult conversation. And even now at 25, that's something that I still, as an adult, I still engage with and I still deal with. But then what's interesting about entering the workplace is that there's no hierarchy anymore. It's a flat structure. You're expected to do your job. You won't always be told, here's what you should do. These are the steps. You're not going to be spoon-fed. No one's going to hold your hand. And just because an older person has said something doesn't mean they're correct. And it's also just important to share your opinion. In the workplace, they want to hear what you think. That's a large part or a large way to show that you're contributing, that you're listening, is to give your opinion in response, right? So
Right.
that's something that for me, I found when I first started at Microsoft, I found it was a new thing. And I really had to practice being able to speak up, not just with my peers and the people that were the same age as me and with other
Mhm.
graduates, but speak up in a room of people that might be older than me, that might be more senior than me. But I think you just have to practice that. You just have to be honest with yourself, recognize where it's working for you, where it's not working for you. How can you be showing up better in the workplace? Um, and just make sure that you are not showing up because of any external factors or because someone's making you feel some type of way. Or sometimes it's not even external, sometimes it's we project things, right? We feel
Hmm.
something ourselves. No one said anything, no one's done anything that's made us feel that way, but we feel insecure and then we act out of that. So it's being able to identify that and correct it.
And now some special questions tailored for our younger listeners in the audience. What skill do you think is the most important in a Queen engineer?
Oh, I think the most important skill is adaptability.
Okay.
I think you need to be able to learn new skills quickly on the fly as needed, be able to deal with changing priorities, changing deadlines, changing goals, because that's just how it goes. So just being able to adapt to new environments, new people, new goals, new skills, all of the above.
If you could go back in time and give your teenage self one piece of advice, what would it be?
To calm down. To calm down. When I was in school, I was a little uptight and, things that really aren't that important felt so important to me at the time. And the reality is, if you don't get all A stars, you will survive. The world will not
Yeah.
explode. Nothing bad will happen to you. Um, but sometimes you put so much pressure on yourself. So I would tell myself to calm down.
I get that. How do you think engineering will change in the future with the influence of AI? I think we were talking a bit about that before.
Yeah. So, I think AI is a great thing. I think it's a really great tool. It will allow us to do things faster, achieve our goals better. I think, so repeat the question, how will the world change with AI or
How do you think engineering will change?
engineering will change with AI? I think it's the same thing as before, and I think it comes back to the adaptability, right? It's being able to learn quickly, learn on the fly. It means that the skills that are required of us will change and they will change faster than they have before. So I think you've just got to be able to keep up with what's trending. And I think a lot of the time it's just, okay, which skills are trending? What do I need to know? Not being afraid to change, right? Not being afraid of things around you in your environment changing. Um, you hear a lot of people saying, they're afraid that ChatGPT is going to take their job. And obviously now we've got some really great co-pilots and really great tools that help people with software development. Some people argue it's doing it better than a lot of humans, but there'll always be a need for a human in the loop. So it's just understanding where that human will sit in that process and making sure that you're ready to be that human.
And last but not least, how can young girls start preparing now for engineering, even if we're still in school? Are there any resources, books, or websites you can recommend for them?
I think that touches on what we were talking about earlier when we were talking about preparing for university. I don't unfortunately have any book recommendations or large resources, but I think getting tapped into different networks, there are so many networks, especially as you reach the tail end of school and the beginning of university, that allow you to meet huge companies, get involved in different insight days. I don't know if Head Start EDT still exists. Head Start was a huge thing when I was in school. They do some engineering courses where you can go to a university and spend time there seeing what they do and hearing from people in industry. What else is there? There's the Bright Network. There's Color in Tech. So there are different ways that there's She Can Code. There are different platforms and organizations that are really great at what they do, and exposing you to that. I think if you can get work experience, do it. I think even if it's not your dream, try it. It might surprise you. And even if it confirms that it's not the right thing, knowing that it's the wrong thing gets you closer to the right thing. And even then, you can still identify, okay, I largely didn't like it, but there must be something that was enjoyable about it. There must be something that was beneficial or valuable to you. Was there something that you learned? So I think just being open to the different experiences that come your way. There are podcasts as well. I just have a look on Spotify, Apple Music, wherever you get your podcasts. Um, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for talking to us today. I really enjoyed personally how we were like with going through from how your background from school, then Imperial, and how if there's one thing I learned from this talk, it's that find your interests, and then explore yourself. It's never too late to learn more about yourself and like go all in on the interests that you have.
100%, 100%. And once again, thanks for having me. It was really great to have this chat, and it also prompts my own reflection as well. So,
Thank you so much.
cool. Thanks, Laura.